This
More
conference
senior
will
people
now be recorded.
remember that or know that song. But if you don't, that's fine. It's got a really lovely tune. So when you go home, Google it and play it on YouTube or something or other. It's quite a lovely song. So anyway, I started writing this exhortation a few weeks ago. The weather has settled out a bit in that time over the last few weeks, hasn't it? But if you think back to late April, early May, when we had a prolonged period of overcast skies and occasional rain, sometimes torrential. As it turned out, the forecast atmospheric river was very slow to flow, wasn't it? The cloud would only intermittently release the water. Every day seemed to be the same. No sun, just the odd glimpse when the cloud blanket let a sun ray or two slip through to remind us that behind all this murk, the heavens and the sun were still up there. Do you remember that? You may do. It's amazing what we forget over time, really, isn't it? And prior to this, we had experienced a few weeks of what you might call average but unseasonal weather, generally characterised by high humidity delivered by nor'easterly winds. A few intermittent days with beautiful blue skies and perfect temperatures misled us to believe that our autumn was back, or so we thought. And prior to this, again, we had Gabrielle and the destructive precursor rains a couple of weeks earlier, which had also slumped and slid quite a bit of New Zealand down valleys and rivers and into harbours and oceans, leaving open land wounds exposed to view and susceptible to further infection and tissue collapse, more appropriately referred to as erosion. It doesn't seem long ago that I was thinking about how fortunate we are in New Zealand with our temperate and relatively predictable climate, and how we tend to be spared from tropical cyclones. Well, all that seems to have changed a bit lately, doesn't it? With climate change, New Zealand, the land of the long white cloud, is at risk of being labelled the land of the long grey atmospheric river, and I don't know the Maori for that, so don't ask me. Living out on the Awhitu Peninsula, that's north the peninsula that forms the south head of the Manukau Harbour. So you basically go from here, you go down country, across to the west, and then back up north again. Living there for the last 10 years. We've been living there for the last 10 years. I've had lots of opportunity to use my camera, and I very frequently take advantage of the beautiful scenery and the changing light conditions. I love taking photos. So just to throw you, that's not actually taken out on the Awhitu Peninsula, it's actually up north. That little thing up the top there, it sort of gets washed out a little bit at large scale, but that's a yacht in front of a wave. Yeah. I'm really just demonstrating I like playing with images. However, over the last few months, with a few exceptions, I found myself venturing out with my camera less frequently than normal. And the reason was obvious to me: lack of light and consequential loss of definition and colour. Like that. And that is actually out on the Awhitu Peninsula. Just too much moody, gloomy cloud cover, flattening everything out and grading off values. Frustrating, uninspiring. I asked myself, is that all there is? Is that all there is to autumn? Just like a few months earlier, I heard lots of people ask, what? Is that all there is? Is that all there is to summer? And summer was like that too, wasn't it? It sort of didn't happen this year. Well, being largely a collection of very old sand dunes, the Awhitu Peninsula has recently suffered more than its share of slumps and slips and scarring of the land. That's a view from a road looking down a valley. There's heaps of them out there. Yep. A year ago, I would never have dreamed that we would have to navigate through 2 sets of traffic lights to drive the 30-kilometre rural coastal trip down to Waiuku. We do that every time I go there now. It's usually 2 stops in either direction. Or that we would no longer be able to access our sheds at Manukau Heads by public road because a section of the road had collapsed down the valley some 200 or 300 metres below. I'm just going to flick through these a little bit. It's a, in case you're wondering, it's not a giant fence post in the landscape. It's a normal size fence batten suspended by the wires that are holding it up. And you can see that the land underneath it has totally disappeared down there. It's not a very good image, that one. It's a little bit washed out, but never mind. And there's another shot for you. You can see the fence going across the top, cables, water pipes, I think, actually. And you can see the corner of the road here, and you can see how the whole road's just gone, collapsed down the hill. And I think there's one more. Yep, that's as seen from our little piece of land. The flaxes there are actually on our boundaries, so you can see how close it is to us. So, as I said, we can't drive there on the public road anymore. Right, I like to take photos in daylight. I've done limited night photography, but I'd sooner work in the light. Having said that, I do have a huge number of late afternoon shots down at Hamilton's Gap on the west coast. It's only about a 10-minute drive from home. I love to watch and capture the sun dropping towards and into the ocean, and the ever-changing beautiful colours in the sky and the reflections in the water and the sand. I'll just flick through a few of these. So the first two were at Hamilton's Gap. That's actually in the Manukau Harbour, that last one. But usually either the sun, or if it's obscured, the sun's rays breaking through the clouds and illuminating patches on the water or land surface, or the remnants of light before sunrise and after sunset must be visible to achieve worthwhile results. It's not just the rotation of the Earth, but atmospheric moisture or cloud cover which obscures the sun. There we go. When sufficiently concentrated as a monolithic cloud blanket, it hides the sun and the heavens from our view, and how easy it is day after day with cloud to forget that the sun even exists. Occasionally we get a small break in the cloud blanket and we see the blue sky and light beyond, and our spirits are lifted. How dare this layer of depression hide the beauty and warmth and positivity of the sun from us? We feel like we need a gigantic leaf blower to enlarge the hole in the clouds and let more of the sun's rays through to illuminate, warm and motivate the earth. And yet most of my most interesting landscape photos are when there are clouds in the sky, which play with the light of the sun and produce these beautiful rays of warm light. Blue sky and cloud combos are great for landscape photography. There is blue sky up there, believe it or not. Sometimes in life it takes the bad to appreciate the good, doesn't it? And an open expanse of cloudless blue sky sometimes produces uninspiring results. Anyway, cyclones and storms aside, clouds have historically had an important role to play in maintaining the natural cycles of our planet, don't they? Without the sun, there is darkness, which we experience each night, or during the day, a darkening of the sky by blanket cloud formation and the ensuing drab uniformity of colour and tone, which is uninspiring. It really does affect how we feel, doesn't it? It certainly does affect me. I just feel so much brighter on a blue sky day. I guess most people do. Too much cloud for too long can deprive us of motivation. And to make matters worse, we have the seasonal shortening of days. Sometimes it feels like winter is here for 3/4 of the year. Too much night and not enough light. And with climate change and projected even more dramatic El Nino weather patterns ahead, it's hard to see the future getting any brighter. Well, you're probably wondering what all this has to do with why we are here this morning. We've talked a bit about sun and light and our appreciation of it, haven't we? It's important though, the sun sustains life, the sun produces light. Without the sun, we would not be here. Taking photos helps me to see. I see things I would not see if I didn't apply a photographer's eye. When I'm with others sometimes, say going for a walk, I notice that they often don't notice things that I see. And the evidence is in the photos that they see when we return from the walk. Without a photographer's eye, we miss out on so much. We need the light to see, but we need something else to take advantage of that light to really see. If we don't use the light that we are given to search things out, we won't discover the things that we wouldn't otherwise see. John tells us that the Word is light and that Jesus is the Word. Jesus is therefore the light that guides us through life, and God's word is our illuminating tool to search things out. We need that light to keep on course. When we read the word, we all know the difference between reading it superficially and really examining it. Same thing as having a photographer's eyes when you go for a walk. There is a difference between hearing and listening, isn't there? In the same way, there's a difference between seeing and really observing. In times of obscurity, when we feel like our lives are under a blanket of cloud and it is hard to see the light source, or we feel like life is dark and night-like, we need to remember that Jesus is still out there behind the cloud, and pray for more blue sky days when we have no difficulty seeing his light and feeling his warmth. When we can't see him, we need a robust faith to remind us that he is still there and working in our lives, especially when the Gabriel storms descend on us. We need to be certain of what we do not see with our eyes. Hebrews 11, or the balance of the chapter that we didn't actually read this morning, lists examples of faithful people. Many of them ahead of their time saw Christ in the Word, even before Christ was in the world. They had a photographer's eye that allowed them to see things that others could not. They saw through the darkness, through the obscurity of the law. They saw the sun's rays, and the sun rays illuminated their minds, motivated them, and strengthened their faith. Without faith, we live in darkness. We live out our lives, and at the end we think and maybe say, is that all there is? If we have lived faithless lives, we are unlikely to have had a photographer's eye. We won't have made use of the light source to see the things that aren't so obvious. We will not have recognised or thought enough of the creator of the world, the creator of the sun, the creator of life, and the creator of Jesus, his son, the true light of this world. The Peggy Lee song concludes in the third stanza, and it's speaking of a suicidal thought after a rejection in love. And I'm going to read that out to you. Oh no, not me. I'm not ready for that final disappointment, because I know just as well as I'm standing here talking to you, when that final moment comes and I'm breathing my last breath, I'll be saying to myself, is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, friends, then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball if that's all there is. It's quite an absurd notion, really, isn't it? To prophesy that when you are on your deathbed, you will be asking, is that all there is? And then concluding that in the meantime, you might as well just keep on dancing, breaking out the booze and having a ball, isn't it? It's too late. If you are in the light, you understand that life is the time to serve the Lord, not to dance and booze and have a ball, knowing that at the end you will ask yourself, is that all there is? It's too easy for life to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. God is light. This is exhibited on numerous occasions, or countless occasions in Scripture. Paul, who was literally blinded by the light in his first letter to Timothy, referred to God as one, quote, who alone is immortal and who lives in unapproachable light. God created life on earth. Genesis 1 tells us all about it. I'm not going to quote it. He is the creative source of light. Jesus too is light. He reflects God, but more than that, doesn't he? He is God made manifest, and we understand that through the word. For mankind, and particularly for the faithful, Jesus made God approachable. Through Jesus, we can approach that holy place, the most holy place. That is why we are here today. And John said of Jesus, the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And Jesus stated of himself, he said, while I am in the world, and I've never really thought about that, but he's quite particular. He said, while I am in the world, I am the light of the light. I am the light of the world. Paul of Jesus, the Son is the radiance of God's glory to the Hebrews. And John again, when Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. If we have faith, we see this light. And if we use the photographer's eye, we see it in more detail. Jesus is God's Son and our radiant Son. He sustains our lives, makes us grow. Through him, we produce fruit. He lightens our path so we can see, and his warmth comforts us. His light brings us closer to our Creator, and it motivates us. Unlike the seasons, day and night, and unseasonal weather, which are things that individually we have no control over, we can generally choose between light and darkness in the way we live. If we do lose the light and end up groping around in the darkness at some point in our lives, we can end up wounded and scarred, like the sand dunes after Gabriel. It's not really a good look. And unstable land tends to keep moving, to keep slumping. It certainly does when you're talking about sandhills. Over time, even those who have not seen the light, for unbelievers, it doesn't take much for the bottom to fall out of their lives in a giant slump and to consider the option of permanent darkness where there is no pain. Is that all there is, they ask? And now we'll just have a little focus on light and unbelievers. Paul tells us, the God of this age has blinded the mind of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For what we preach is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. So note that it is not God who has blinded unbelievers. If you read it very superficially, you can take away that impression. Oh, God's blinded the minds of unbelievers. Well, that's a bit unfair, isn't it? But he's not actually saying that at all. He's saying the God of this age blinds the minds of unbelievers. Too busy, too distracted. John also deals with those who have an ulterior motive or who want or choose to live in darkness. And I'm quoting from John chapter 3, this is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. For unbelievers, light can even be confused as darkness. Leonard Cohen, quoting another musician here, sorry about that, I like music. Some of you will be familiar with Leonard Cohen. He died 2 or 3 years ago, but quite famous in his own right. He's a Jewish man. His final album release shortly before he died was titled You Want It Darker, which was also the title of one of the tracks. And I've actually referred to this in a prior exhortation, but we're looking at it from a different perspective here. And this album was a final poke at those who who referred to his music as dark. But at least Leonard Cohen canvassed life and death and spirituality in his poetry and music. And in doing so, he earned this reputation among the secular as being a producer of dark music. From our perspective, he certainly didn't reflect the light of Christ in his poetry or music, but there were many flickers of light that were ironically understood to be, by those ignorant of history generally, and more particularly to references to the Jewish faith, to be dark or too hard to understand. So Yeah, and so certain elements in society would have written Leonard Cohen, or did write Leonard Cohen off for that reason. Just like the Bible, dark and hard to understand. It is ironic, isn't it, that the Bible, the word, the source of light, the means of truly seeing, is regarded as a dark book in some quarters. So here's an example of one of those flickers of light I referred to, and it's from Cohen's song called Anthem. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. It's quite a powerful and thought-provoking image, isn't it? Cracked, perhaps earthen vessels, but it is precisely this crack that lets the light in. A statement of the flawed or cracked human condition that ironically can allow the light in if we allow it. I'm doing well, I'm remembering to change the slides. This here is a photo of a triptych painting. It's actually hanging in our house. And as you enter our front door, bang, there it is right in front of you. Some people have things like Jesus is Lord and that kind of thing, but we put this there, and you can see it says, read it, it says, we are all damaged vessels, so there is grace. It was actually done by our son-in-law, Joel, down in Wellington about 10 years ago, and we went to an exhibition of his at a gallery called Manky Chops, which was perfect for Joel, and we purchased this little piece of artwork, which I actually really love, because there's a lot to think about in that. We are all damaged vessels, so there is grace. Grace is the light, and interestingly, grace was in the hymn that we sang today as well. Grace is the light that God has provided to let the light in and heal us. All humans, believers and unbelievers alike, are cracked or damaged. That's the human condition. The blinded category of unbelievers that we referred to earlier, that just wants to go through life and die when their time is up, and who seem to be quite happy to accept that that's all there is. These people are not necessarily bad people. They just don't believe, they do not understand, they do not see. Remember, unbelievers aren't all scoffers. There are many out there who just simply haven't been introduced to the light. So remember that these people really are our pool of potential converts. They are the others in the following quote. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp, you'll know who's speaking, and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, there's the others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. That's from Matthew, that particular quote. This is where figuratively we show people our photos so that they can see what they have not been able to see what the God of this world has blinded them to see what they are missing out on. Yes, we have a job to do. That's unbelievers. Now let's just have a wee look at, we're getting towards the close now, so let's just have a look at light and believers. Jesus. No one lights a lamp and puts it in a place where it will be hidden or under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand so that those who come in may see the light. Your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eyes are healthy, your whole body is full of light, but when they're unhealthy, your body is also full of darkness. See to it then that the light within you is not darkness. There's that confusion again. Light confused with darkness. We can think we are living in the light, but in reality, we are in darkness. And carrying on from that quote, therefore, if your whole body is full of light and no part of it dark, it will be just as full of light as when a lamp shines its light on you. So did you catch that last bit there? We aren't just to reflect Christ, which we must do. We are also to be a source of the same light. It's sort of like lighting a fire. We need the match to initiate combustion. But then the fire takes hold and generates light and heat of its own. And Paul to the Thessalonians, but you, brothers and sisters, are not in darkness so that this day should surprise you like a thief. You are children of the light and children of the day. We do not belong to the night or to the darkness. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light, for the fruit of the light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. It is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret, but everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light. That is why it is said, wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. That's Paul to the Ephesians. And Paul is not talking of the dead here, is he, when he says, wake up, sleeper? Rather, he is talking about those who think they are in the light, but are in fact walking in darkness. Light exposes us if we live in darkness, whether we realise it or not. Do we want to appear before Christ with visible open sores and scars as evidence of our foray into darkness? Stay in the light, don't venture into darkness. Rather, let our light shine by reflecting his light. We are urged to both reflect Christ and to be a source of light in our communities. The night is nearly over, the day is almost here, so let us put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armour of light. The light protects us. We have a responsibility to let our light shine, not just by what we say, but by how we act. Whether we are good speakers or not, we must work out how we can let our lights shine so others see Christ working through us. And we must keep our lights on and be on the watch for potential receptiveness to our faith. We need to remember too that what we see now, and I'm talking about the faithful here, even if we have a photographer's eye, we are only seeing a pixel depleted image of the future. What did Paul say? What no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, those things God has prepared for those who love him. A clearer image is coming. And Paul again in 1 Corinthians, for we now see only a reflection as in a mirror, then we shall see face to face. Sometimes when I'm down at Hamilton's Gap, that's on the west coast, about halfway up the Awhiri Peninsula, with my camera, and there is, as there is so often, a beautiful reflection, I consciously place the horizon line halfway down the screen when framing the photo. When I get home and edit the photo, I rotate or invert the image 180 degrees. So the reflection is at the top and the landscape is at the bottom. It's kind of counterintuitive. I'm just going to show you a few here. There we go. You can see that reflection at the top. I often post these inverted images on my Facebook site. I get quite a few reactions and comments. Some people love these distortions of reality. A photo almost turns into an artwork or a painting. Others can't handle or process them. They find them too mind-bending. But the distortion in the image that we expect to be clear is a good example of seeing darkly as we do now. Jesus said he is the light of the world when he is in the world. Now he isn't in the world. So we see a comparatively crude reflection of the truth through the word. When he comes back and explains everything, we will see face to face. We will see directly and not an inverted reflection. That's my last slide. You'll be happy to know I'm just about concluded, really, truly. I just put that up because the sun's just gone down. So I just want to go away. I mean, I just want to finish with you. Well, we'll just really express the view that, look, that sun is going to rise. And Jesus is certainly going to come back into view. He is certainly going to come back into the world after the sunset. And just finally, I want to quote from 1 John chapter 1. This is the message we have heard from him and declare to you. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. If we claim to have fellowship with him and yet walk in the darkness, we lie and do not live out the truth. But if we walk in the light, as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his Son, purifies us from all sin. Now we will symbolically take of the body and blood of Jesus, and we can reflect on these things, bathe in the light of Christ, and feel the warmth of fellowship. Thank you.